Okay, and we have our last presentation for this morning's session. We are pleased to have here with us TG Marine Gas Engineering Company, Mr. Björn Munko, who is the Senior Sales Manager. And his presentation is about developments on ethane, ethylene, and small LNG carriers. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for Lloyd for inviting us today to give our presentation. My name is Björn Munko. I've been working for TG Marine Gas Engineering for 13 years now. About 2003 I started. TG Gas Engineering, I always like to say we do everything that is liquefied gas and floats. So we do gas carriers, we do offshore units, and we have been in the market for 35 years. As TGE, there has been a development in the company. We started in 1980 under the name of Liquid Gas International. We were bought in the 90s by Tractable. This is still where the T in TGE comes from, and used to be Tractable Gas Engineering. Now it's TGE Marine Gas Engineering. We had a management buyout in 2006, stayed for about 10 years with a financial investor, Caledonia, from London, and have recently been bought by MES. That was last year, MES being Mitsui Engineering and Shipbuilding. Our head office is in Bonn. We have also offices in Shanghai, in other countries, for example, Japan and Korea. We are represented by agencies. Our market as a whole, as I said, everything that's liquefied gas and floats. It used to be also the land-based side, but this is now a separate entity which is called TGE Gas Engineering compared to TG Marine Gas Engineering. So they're still under the same roof in Bonn, but they take care of the land-based side, where we take care of the marine and offshore side. So our typical role in the project is an EPCS contract, as we call it. It's an engineering, procurement, and construction supervision contract. So we design the complete gas plant, deliver the gas plant and the cargo handling system and the cargo tanks to the shipyard, and then we make sure that everything is installed in the right way, and we make sure that everything works in the right way during the pre-commissioning and the commissioning. And of course, with that comes on the after end comes the after sales and the support of the ship owners, and on the front end, depending on the projects and depending on the complexity of the project, comes front-end engineering design, feasibility studies, which we also do if that is necessary. On the shipping market, that is LPG, ethylene, and LNG carriers. We have the fuel gas systems, LNG fuel gas systems for any type of vessel and any type of engine. So we're not linked to any engine maker, but we have been delivering fuel gas systems for Wärtsilä, Rolls-Royce, MAN, MAK engines. And we're also capable of doing ship design services in case the shipyard does not have their own ship design services, or the shipyard is not working with any other ship designer. So it's not an exclusion for us if you come with your own ship design, but we are also able to help you with the ship design if that is needed. This is the gas carrier market, and this is shown by temperature and size. So having the complete gas carrier market, if you look at the very small range, we have the fully pressurized carriers. If you have look at the very large range, very cold, we have the large LNG carriers. In the middle here, this is our typical field in the market, is the handy size and semi-ref LPG and ethylene carriers. Especially in the ethylene carriers, this is where we consider ourselves to be the market leader. There's two new segments which we already heard about today, which is the semi-fully ref ethane carriers. Until 3 years ago, the largest ethane carriers were 21,000 cubic meter. Now we have heard today that the largest ones are ethane carriers of 87,000 cubic meters. Another market segment that is new is LNG bunker vessels. We have been working in the small-scale LNG carrier segment, where we have been delivered systems for 22 vessels. This is for the transport section, and now this is the new one which comes into the LNG bunker section, where we deliver LNG to the consumers using LNG as fuel. And this is the two market segments I would like to concentrate on in this presentation. Starting with the ethane market, we have, in terms of technical challenges, we already heard today that the ethane does have has a very high methane content coming out of the US shale gas. We need to look into the propulsion. We need to look into the tank types. So up to now, there's no consensus in the market, I would say, on the tank type. We see that the membrane tanks are being built. We see a project with bilobe type C trilobe type C tanks. We have our design with bilobe type C tanks. So it's still a very much evolving market, and there's many possibilities there, which has to establish itself. Unfortunately, a little bit on the very large side of the let's call them VLECs, the market is a little bit slow at the moment due to the oil price and the price difference in naphtha and ethane. So the buoyancy, the volatility of the market that we would have been seen on the old naphtha to oil range is not, or naphtha to gas range is not really there anymore. So a lot of the investment decisions that have been taken have triggered this market. Maybe would not have been taken in today's environment. On the other hand, the shale gas from the US is a market considered with like offshore oil or offshore gas, which can be ramped up and down a lot quicker than offshore oil and gas market, for example, because it's smaller entities. So looking into this, we have been in the market of the largest ethylene carriers for 15 years. About 15 years ago, we delivered for Navigator the 22,000 cubic meter ethylene carriers, which were the largest ethylene carriers at that time, and it was questioned by the market if these vessels would ever be utilized. And today we see vessels of 35 and 87,000 cubic meters. So this was a very early development, which has paid out, at least for the definitely for the owner at that time, and in the meanwhile a lot more, because I think the vessels are more or less fully utilized on ethylene now. So looking into the systems, we have 10 years later, we had the same order from the same owner at the same shipyard of 21,000 cubic meters. So going from 22,000 to 21,000 cubic meter, and basically the same project again. And we looked at the old project, and together with the owner, we looked into what kind of improvements could we do, especially on the cargo handling system. And what we identified is we can improve cooling rates and we can improve loading rates when the vessels are trading on LPG. This we do. One item we included was an ethylene gas cooler, where we pre-cool the gas using the refrigerant cascade system. This gives us, if you look at the pH diagram, this gives us an advantage in the ethylene gas cooler. And I won't go down into the whole details because I think I only got 15 minutes and we are almost ready for the coffee break. So I don't want to bore you with the technical details, but you're more than welcome to ask later today or during the coffee break. The other thing we did is we integrated the LPG loading sequence or propylene loading sequence into the refrigerant cascade system. So we're using the LPG, the ethylene condenser, we're using that in a chiller mode when we're loading LPG, and that increases the loading rates for warm LPGs by up to 60%. That was one too much. Another item we looked into was the whole concept of the refrigerant system. We have been asked by the owner at the time to make it a lot more automated, to have the refrigerant compressor follow the cargo compressors a lot more automated, and that's what we did using a couple of changes in the system. We went from thermostatic expansion valves to control valves. The challenge we had is we're using 2 refrigerant compressors on 3 cargo compressors, so it's a 3-on-2 system, which makes it a little bit challenge to control, especially if we're talking about automatic control and automatic following the load of the compressor. So at the end of the day, we came up with a fully automated system. And we did a full simulation on that. Oh, it's gone. We did a full simulation on that, so we could basically commission the system virtually before we went into the gas trial. and that helped us to have a very efficient gas trial and a very well working system during the gas trial. So now we have, this is the old ones, and on an earlier slide you have seen the new ones, the 22,000. A follow-up on that is the contract we have, and the first one being delivered now is the 37,000 cubic meter ethane carriers. It's actually 35,000 cubic meter cargo tank capacity, and 2 times 1,000 cubic meter deck tank capacity. The deck tanks can be used either as cargo tanks, so increasing the capacity from 35 to 37, or can be used as LNG fuel gas tanks, because the vessel has a dual fuel engine based on a high pressure MEGI propulsion with high pressure pumps, and we delivered the complete cargo handling system, including the fuel gas system for this vessel. And this is also the link to the second part of the presentation, because now we are looking at LNG as fuel gas, and now we're looking at where does the LNG come from and how do we get there. We are in a very lucky position that we were able to win the first 3 projects for LNG bunker vessels for the European market. There is the Shell vessel. This is the 6,500 cubic meter LNG bunker vessel built at STX yard in Korea. There is the NYK NG vessel, 5,100 cubic meter LNG bunker vessel. And there's the 5,800 cubic meter bunker vessel, which will be trading for Scangas, and it will be owned by Sirius and Antony Feder as a joint entity. So over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we have developed the specification for the vessels together with the owner and the shipyards. First one has been contracted 1.5 years ago, and the first ones are going into service this year. And there has been quite some challenges looking into the cargo handling systems and the new requirements. We are coming from the small-scale LNG market, where we have been quite successful, starting with the Methane here. I think it's one of the most famous vessels in the small-scale LNG market, a combined LNG ethylene carrier trading along the Norwegian coast for Antony Feder. We have been going up to 15,000 and then up to 30,000 cubic meter with the small-scale LNG, and we have taken that experience we have had and moved that into the LNG bunker vessel, and then added on what type of systems we needed to have the vessel capable of LNG bunkering. Having said that, already the Methane has done operations such as filling trucks on a berth. There was some trading reason for that, and it's something she wasn't designed for, but it's even capable with these kind of vessels. But of course the bunker vessels are a lot more optimized for the task they have. On the tank side, if we look at the small-scale LNG market, I think the Type C tanks are pretty well established in the small-scale LNG market, and we believe that this is the best solution in the ranges even above 30,000 cubic meters. So the cargo tanks for the bunker vessels, they're all Type C tanks. 2 of them have 2 cylindrical tanks, and 1 has 2 bilop tanks due to length and size restrictions. Then the question is, when we look into the design of the cargo handling system, is where do we need to bunker to? So we need to look at our customers. This could be our 35K vessel, this could be coastal vessels, passenger vessels, or even large container vessels. And for large container vessels, we would probably be looking into a fuel capacity of 10 to 13,000 cubic meter, which would mean we would need even bigger bunker vessels of 15,000 cubic meters about. So the main components, or one of the main components, is the interface and the ship-to-ship transfer system. Here we see 2 different systems deployed on the projects we have. Shell is using a hard arm, not this one, but an FMC hard arm. Looks not really similar, but it's the same concept basically. The other 2 are using basically ship-to-ship transfer systems based on hoses, and there's been a lot of development and a lot of design to get this right, because transferring this, we have seen ship-to-ship transfer on LPG, on LNG, but transferring that into the LNG bunker market is quite a challenge. The design concepts, we need to look at the service of the LNG bunker vessel. Well, it supplies LNG to a variety of receiving systems. Could be Type C tanks, could be even membrane tanks. We need to adapt then the functions of the cargo system and look at the ball of gas handling. And the fire handling system function is basically the liquid handling, the vapor handling, and also the custody transfer, which is a more on the custody transfer side. On the bunker vessels, we're looking into a more integrated system than on standard transport vessels. The liquid handling is the loading of the LNG. Usually we get the LNG either from small-scale LNG terminals or from large-scale LNG terminals. So depending on the size of the vessel, we need to be able to also load a large-scale LNG terminals. And this is the core methane, I think, loading in Zeebrugge here on the 16-inch loading arms. The liquid storage, if we have the LNG in the tanks, in order to unload the LNG, as long as we're not talking about very small vacuum insulated tanks, we need to handle the ball of gas. Usually it's sufficient to handle the ball of gas by getting cold LNG from the supplier and then burning the LNG in the engines. If we need to go to membrane or atmospheric storage tanks, then in addition to that we need a cooling system. So pressure control, there's different systems available in the market. We have a very small system here based on a Stirling cycle. We have a little bit larger system here based on a nitrogen Brayton cycle. This is deployed on the Shell vessel. And we have, as TGE, developed a cascade type process which we can deploy on anything between 5,000 and 30,000 cubic meters. This is basically an upgrade of our cascade time ethylene system up to LNG. And that basically brings me to the end of my presentation. As a summary, I think we have covered two quite different new markets. But the interesting thing is that there are new markets and there are new developments. So for companies like TGE, it's exciting to get into these developments. And the important thing for us is to do this together with the shipyards and together with the owners. And this is why I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Do we have any questions from the floor before we break off for the coffee break? Okay, then I'll take one very short one, and if you could be brief. I saw with very interest this project you have, which is an ethane carrier potentially can use LNG as fuel.
Yeah.
Do you see that concept moving also into LPG carriers, and do you see that it will be, the long-term solution, or you are focusing now on LPG as fuel, the LPG carriers, and ethane as fuel, ethane carriers?
I mean, it depends a little bit on the speed that the engine makers like Wärtsilä or MAN are able to develop LPG or ethane engines. I mean, there are already some projects in the market where we can use ethane or LPG as fuel. On the other hand, these carriers they use multiple type of cargo. So if I have an ethane engine, but this carrier is able to load VCM, to load propylene. So if I look at the multiple cargos on the vessel, it's probably more sensible to go into the LNG direction of fuel gas if I want to go for clean gas. If I know that this vessel will trade in LPG or in ethane, I would probably go rather in the direction of an ethane or an LPG propulsion.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, are there any other questions? Okay, I think it's now safe to say that we can break off for the coffee break. I think we